What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Pro v Pro. Major championship season is over, but golf continues. We're starting to get psyched up for the NFL season. But again, lots of golf to talk about. In fact, next week we have the Olympics, and then we got some Ryder Cup action as well. So the major championship season is over. Golf season, still plenty of great stuff to look forward to, including a pretty fun post-major tournament here this week at the 3M Open. Justin, what were your thoughts of Troon in general?
Let me first state that it sucks that it's 1 year from now before we get to see another Open Championship.
Yeah.
Troon did its part again without mostly in part to weather. There was obviously some wave differential that happened, and Troon did what it did, and it brought the field together on Saturday. You had comers and goers for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You had an obvious wave advantage, which I didn't recognize until, what did I text you, like 9 or 10 o'clock the night before? I was like, I got to build one last second lineup that late early looks like the way to go. But in general, just fun golf. Like it is just the most fun golf. And it's funny because I hear a lot of conversations here in Texas talking about how Texas golf compares to links golf and you know, how it's so different than like your normal parkland courses. And it's true. Like the wind, you know, there's not as much definition off the tee. Like it's very different. And you know, that's why I think that's maybe why you see guys with success have success over there all the time.
Yeah, I thought Troon was spectacular. Not just the weather, but just the golf course as a whole really, really held up, provided a fantastic test. And the other aspect of it, too, is it wasn't just that we had a lot of wind, it's that we got different winds, right? And so, like, I don't think people recognized so much on Saturday. The thing that made it so tough on the back wasn't just that the wind picked up. It was the wind completely changed direction and picked up. So all of a sudden the back nine became, as I think we had 3 different guys, Rom, DJ, and Scotty, all say it became the toughest 9 holes that any of them had ever played.
Yeah, and really the wind switched back to what they had played every practice round at. So like I would say they were more prepared for that than anything. Obviously it played even more difficult. I was disappointed in Lowry. There was a couple of people that complained about the setup of saying they made it too long, they made it too unfair, they made it. I can't get behind those comments because they prepared for one wind direction, looked at the forecast, and it just did what Scotland does, right? It just all of a sudden changed. You can't make it too easy for the early guys. You just got to prepare for what you say. And I actually took it the other way. I was like, man, they did a really good job setting this course up for the conditions that were coming. Yeah. And then they just changed. So
that wind shift happened like 4 hours ahead of schedule, by the way. Like, well, it was forecast to eventually change, but that change happened 4 hours early. So yeah, to your point, that's not something they should have been setting up the course for at the beginning of the day.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but Billy Horschel was very impressive. Like his demeanor, his the way he played. He hit a really, really bad shot on, was it 2T? That he hit a big old snap hook that ended up over there perfect. Which I think if I had to argue anything bad about links golf, is the bigger you miss it, the better off you are when you have a lot of crowds. That would be my biggest argument of why it's bad. But I thought he might unravel right there. Man, he did the opposite.
And to your point there, like one thing that makes Troon better than a lot of Open Championship courses is that you have those course bushes. So a lot of the time, as you said, in links golf, big misses are better than small misses. We saw it, for example, at the Scottish Open last season when McIntyre missed way left on 18, was still able to hit it close and make birdie. That kind of miss on the PGA Tour, like you put that miss on, 18 at Muirfield Village, you're gone. You're in the woods. You're in the creek, right? So I totally agree, but that is something that sets Troon apart from a lot of these Open Championship courses. But it's really funny, by the way, that you bring up Horschel right after Lowry, because I don't think there were two guys who had different post-round comments after that Saturday round than those two, where Horschel was saying, I love when it gets like this. I love when it becomes just a who wants it more, I think were his exact words, type of challenge on the course, where Lowry was kind of just bashing the setup. So my question for you, do you think this is a chicken or the egg situation? Is it that Horschel played well and Lowry played poorly because Horschel wanted that challenge and Lowry didn't? Or is it that Horschel spoke glowingly about the conditions while Lowry bashed them because Horschel played well and Lowry was terrible?
So I'm going to even go one further than both of those statements. And this is going to be, if we had something to take from this to maybe show the way that I feel about golf in general, I think it comes down to their personal life and where they're at in life in general and their golf game in general. Is when you have struggles in life, you're struggling in certain aspects of life as a person, it's easier to put blame on other things. When your headspace is correct, golf is hard. You go out, you put in the work, you do what you're supposed to do. Even when bad things happen, you still respond in a positive way. I think there's more to this than just golf. I think there may be other things going on, because I think that we all know that that's not the Shane Lowry that everybody has known and loved, right? That's not the way he responds. That's not the way he acts. That's not what he says in most aspects.
And in fact, yeah, he has a reputation of being a really good player in those conditions. He still showed it for most of the week that he's good in those conditions. It's why he won an Open Championship. But I think, to your point, there may have been a hint of major championship frustration. Remember back at the PGA Championship, he had this incredible Saturday where he made putt after putt after putt, and then in the final round just shoots 70 while Xander and Bryson shot 65 and 64. So there may have been a little bit of frustration there where he's played really well in the majors this year, but whenever he's had a chance, any kind of opportunity, he's seemingly had that one round that really took him out of contention. Even at the US Open, it was round one, he shot a 74, then 71, 70, 69 in the final three rounds, where if he had played one of those types of rounds to start his week, again, he's right there in contention. So maybe a little bit of boiling over that he just was frustrated that he couldn't put 4 rounds together to actually put himself in real contention.
And even further than that, like just at my local club playing our local games, right? If somebody has something personal going on, they're more likely to throw clubs and get pissed and hate playing golf. Whereas everything is going well, that they just take it with a grain of salt and say, I got to, whatever, I'm going to play better going in. I just think it just felt like he wasn't in the headspace that he normally is, whether that's golf or golf game, personal life, whatever may be going on. That's the one thing that you can't handicap, for lack of a better way to put it, is golf is so mental anyway. What headspace are they in to handle certain situations? And I think that goes even deeper into the field for everybody. I was just surprised at the way that Shane Lowry handled himself and the way that he conducted, all of his interviews just didn't seem like what we know and love. I mean, they made comments on the broadcast about him getting the loudest roars, right? At the opening tee shot, that the crowd just loves him. And the crowd doesn't love him by blaming the golf course setup and making excuses. That's not why the crowd loves him. So it was surprising. I'm going to tell you, I've come 3 folds on Billy Horschel, the way he handled himself, the way he acted. We've talked about him many times. When he got teary-eyed in the middle of an interview, what he did was impressive. And then even Justin Rose, like, they didn't back down. They went out there and played very good rounds on Sunday. Like, they didn't lose that championship Xander just won.
I saw a really interesting stat. Something like the top 15 or so was all over 25 years old. That this was one of those events where I wouldn't even necessarily say experience was a big key. I think it more speaks to how the game is taught, how the game is approached by players in this younger generation, where we're seeing more and more guys make it to the tour because they have figured out that they have one shot that they can hit really well, and they're better off just trying to repeat that as many times as possible throughout the round instead of bringing in the like artistry of the game that used to be valued so much, where you have different shot shapes, different ball flights. I think that really played a big role this week, and it certainly allowed guys like Billy and Justin Rose to contend. But man, they were so good, and for both of them, for me, they both played well on Sunday, but it was in the wind on Saturday. The ball striking was so difficult. They grinded their asses off. Their scrambling was incredible. It was an absolute joy to watch. And I think when we always talk about like how much more fun it is to watch these guys struggle to make pars, they put on a perfect display of why we enjoy that from a fan perspective. They're forced to grind in a way that like that's what we feel like when we go out on the golf course, right? Nothing's easy for us. Nothing was easy for them. Those two embraced that more than anybody else on the course.
Yeah, and so I'll be honest, I can't tell you how much money I lost on Justin Rose because it was a lot. Because the first round was maybe the luckiest breaks. Bounce in, bounce, what out, whatever. Rose got the best breaks maybe I've ever seen on live television in my entire life. Anytime he could end up in a 3-foot wide area between two bunkers, that's where his ball stopped. And he went from literally pitching out sideways to getting it up and down. Like, and it seemed like it happened time and time and time again. So just the way that I am, right? The way that we think is this is going to end. You can't do this forever. What's crazy is it turns out those bad shots where he got the good breaks were the anomaly, not matter of fact how he was actually playing. So I'll just take it on the chin and eat it up. Like, did he play great? Like Horschel, Rose. I mean, a lot of those guys just it was just an impressive display of golf on the positive end. And then we can go that like there's certain guys on the negative end that I want to throw out. Like DeChambeau, like he played better than his score. He got the absolute, maybe the worst tee time, if not the worst tee time. It's in the top 5, like no doubt about it. And then, but Rory, like he may not have got the best draw, but man, he played terrible.
Yeah, he really did. Before we leave Rose for a second, I want to talk about his season because it's kind of hilarious. This guy has missed a ton of cuts. His third best finish on the year is a 32nd at the Charles Schwab, and yet 6th at the PGA Championship, tied for 2nd at the Open Championship. He gained 3 true strokes per round at the PGA Championship, 4.58 at the Open Championship. For context, 4.58. Like that wins most golf tournaments. That wins most elevated events. That's how good his performance was. It's really funny. Somebody we've talked a lot about this season, Akshay Bhatia, in large part because Bhatia has the kind of volatility that puts him in contention. Akshay Bhatia only has one event this year where he gained at least 3 strokes per round. Rose has done it twice. Just a hilarious season that he's having. The 2 spikes are why I think even next year when that team has to figure out who's on the European Ryder Cup team, he's still going to get looks, even if he's playing poorly, because you know that kind of like that bulldog is inside of him and he's capable of just playing fantastic golf when he needs to.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. It's Batia's sorry, hit the table.
Bhatia cost me a lot of money this week, by the way.
Yeah. So I'm glad that we're talking about that because I can't wait to hear your thoughts on him this week. Obviously, that's not where we're going yet. because of the bounce back factor. I think he was a victim of circumstance, if you want to know the truth. That doesn't mean that him playing bad is necessarily – I'm not making an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that there was a lot that went into that. I'm glad you brought him up because I really want to talk about him this week. And to your point of so we can get there later is as a young guy that we know that can win, how does he respond from – I would guess he had high expectations going into last week, and so we'll get there later. Back to the Open Championship. I've
got one final question for you about the Open.
Okay.
And this is actually for all the majors. So we get Scotty winning the Masters, we get Xander winning the PGA Championship, Bryson winning the US Open, and then Xander winning the Open Championship. How would you rank the winning performances of those 4 wins?
Man, you want to talk about being unprepared for a question.
I know my 4th place a lot easier than I know my 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. I have a lean for 1st, though.
So it's crazy because this goes into our thoughts of do you remember that we were the only people in the whole industry that said it's not if, it's when, and then he won 2, mm-hmm. right? We were the only people that were like, it's not if, it's going to happen, it's just when. So, and I'm not saying anything, but we both agreed that it was just a matter of time with him. That performance on Sunday, I honestly think that both Horschel and Rose think that if they shot the numbers they shot, they win on Sunday at Troon. Now, the conditions did get more benign than I think most people thought. I think I would still probably lean to Bryson. I think Xander goes 2 and 3 and Scheffler at 4. That's where
my clear-cut number 4 is Xander's PGA Championship. And that might even be unfair to him. That's mostly, I think, just because it was Valhalla and the quality of golf necessary might not have been the same quality of golf elsewhere. But it also does show up in Data Golf's true strokes gain estimates. It's also, I think it was only 4.75. I say only 4.75, but remember, Rose was just at 4.58 time per second. So 4.75, not nearly as good. Both Xander and Scotty were comfortably over 5 strokes per round at the Open Championship and at the Masters. So it is backed up by data a little bit, but for me, it's mostly just he also shot that opening 62. So Saturday, Sunday, what he had to do on Saturday and Sunday under the gun wasn't nearly as impressive as what he had to do this Saturday and Sunday under the gun.
Yeah, but he's already won. I think the reason that I won't do that is because everybody that is involved in golf, media, whatever you want to call it, had talked about him not being able to do it. So I would almost move him to 2, that performance to 2 because of the expectations of him. He should win, right? And we all know that's probably the hardest time to win is when everybody's like, oh, you're supposed to be a world-class player. You're supposed to be the 2nd or 3rd, 4th best player in the world. You've never won a major. You've never done this. And then you go out there with a lead and have to back it up. Man, that's a really hard spot. I mean, for the mental side of it, I'm not sure that this last Sunday happens without the Valhalla stuff. It's just opinion.
Yeah, I do agree with that. But I also just think one of the big things that I'm kind of using for my criteria is what kind of position were they in at the start of Sunday? Xander's win at the Open Championship is my number 1 because that was as crowded of a leaderboard as we've ever seen, and he went out and he played an unbelievable round of golf. The back 9 is one of the best 9 holes I think ever played in a major championship, and This is probably my favorite stat of the week. I can't remember who said it, but somebody said on the post-round show on Sunday, someone said, this was an unbelievable win by Xander, but I can't help but notice it's another major that Scotty would have won if not for the putter. Wrong.
What?
Very wrong. And it's so wrong that Xander gained more strokes off the tee than Scotty. Xander gained more strokes with his irons than Scotty, and Xander gained more strokes around the green than Scotty for the entire week. So did Scotty play a fantastic event, tee to green, and struggle with the putter again? Yes. But that's how damn good Xander was, that in every aspect, tee to green, he was still better than Scotty, and he putted really well like he seemingly always does. So, man, he has been so good all season. And then to complete my ranks, I think I'm going to go Scotty number 2 over Bryson, just because Bryson required a little bit of misfortune or failure under the gun from Rory, whereas Scotty, like Xander, took matters into his own hands and just blitzed the field.
Yeah, but so did Bryson with the bunker shot on 18. So
100%. Yeah.
I mean, I don't disagree. I think that I'm looking at it more of a player perspective of the person dealing with the demons that they're dealing with and what they have going on, and knowing, like, I think that Scheffler knows how good he is. We know how good he is. It's easier to perform when you've done it. And if you don't get it done that time, same thing, like we're not talking about Scotty not getting it done at the British Open after he had a chance. I mean, what would you say, 6 holes in on Sunday? You're like, man, Scheffler, you better be careful. Like, 4 holes in, like, hey, he's got a chance here. There was a point there that everybody, I think, Scheffler was a favorite maybe through 6 or 7 hole betting favorite through 6 or 7 holes on Sunday. So when you've just done it so much, it just becomes easier. I mean, that's just the way it is.
When Scotty made the back-to-back birdies on 7 and 8, it almost seemed like a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
And then double bogey on 9. That was one of the most brutal doubles that I've ever seen anybody make, by the way. Miss from 5 feet, miss from 2 feet. Goodness. And it's happened way too much for him, but
it hasn't happened lately.
Yeah. Yeah, it really hasn't. Do you think that's major championship related, or is that just, look, he's not the best putter from 5 feet, that's going to happen every now and then? It just so happened it happened on a Sunday at the major this year.
So we're going to disagree here, but it's okay. I think you have to be a better all-around putter the slower the greens are. So the more full and the slower the greens are, you have to hit better putts. They just don't roll as good as, let's stand every blade of grass on a shag carpet the same way, and let's put every grain of glass the same way, and we're going to putt on both. Which one's going to roll better? The glass is going to roll better than the shag carpet. Obviously, that's an extreme analogy.
Yeah.
But the slower, the longer the grass on the greens, the better putter you have to be, period. The better strokes you have to hit.
So, yeah, I agree with that. I think there are different components to putting. In some ways, I completely agree with you. I think the faster the greens are, the better you have to be at marrying the speed to the line. Whereas when they get slow, it becomes much more about how well can you hit your intended line.
And you have to hit it solid, too. Yeah. You have to hit it solid. There's no miss it.
Right. And as far as, like, technically speaking, you have to be better at making a longer stroke. Obviously, you have to hit the ball harder. Scotty's skill on the green, I think, is speed. And so I think for him especially, it probably is easier for him on fast greens. I think that's probably true of many guys on tour. And to your point, that means when it gets slower and he has to just hit his intended line, that's when it's going to be hardest for him, as we saw. And
yeah,
like he very clearly has an issue with a left miss. Like the ball just comes off a little bit further left than he intends. Whether that's a line break or the stroke, I'm not sure. Yeah.
It comes. I mean, you can see it come off the heel. Like you saw it a couple of times on Sunday, where they literally like on the you see the center of the face, and it comes off the heel. What does it do? It bends the putter that way, and it just comes off left. Does this mean he's all of a sudden regress? Like I listen to a sports radio station here in DFW all the time, and they're like, "Oh, I'm sure he's going to get back and throw his." Scotty practiced at a place called Royal Oaks, right by White Rock Creek. They're like, "Oh, he's going to come back and throw his putter right in the creek," and I was like, "You guys are like obviously know nothing about golf. Like it's asinine to me the people that don't have a clue the comments they make." So, but I'm not going to look too much into what Scotty did. The thing that baffled me about Scotty is almost hitting Daniel Brown on 18. Like that was the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Unbelievable. Also, apparently people were tweeting about how like they thought there was some conspiracy going on because his quote tee shot looked different on the NBC broadcast than the Sky Sports broadcast, not realizing, or maybe it was NBC didn't realize that was a provisional because of the first one he hit. So people were so confused that like, how come his tee shot went 280 on the NBC broadcast and went 80 yards on the Sky Sports broadcast?
Yeah, because he ended up taking an unplayable or something, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And then, I mean, literally, that ball bounced right over his head.
Yep.
Right, Daniel Brown's head, like it literally couldn't. I mean, had no business missing him. Like, what happens if that squares him in the back as he's trying to top 10 to get into next year's British Open?
Yeah,
which that's a whole nother story. He makes bogey on 18 to get Matthew Jordan in again for 2 years in a row, top 10ing to get in. But yeah, like that whole sequence on 18, like it was almost. You have all this going on behind them of great golf and everybody's grinding out, playing hard. And here's Scotty hitting quack hooks into the shit and just trying to hit Brown and take him out. It was just a crazy circumstance.
And then you had Tristan Lawrence in the fairway bunker on 18, hits the face, goes out behind him, sticks it close, makes the putt to save par and get that solo fourth place finish. There was a lot going on at the end.
$200,000.
The tournament was already over.
Yeah, $200,000 saved by him. And so I've done that. So I was trying to qualify for the Nelson 1 year, for the Byron Nelson 1 year at what's now my home course. Back then it wasn't. This is like late, probably like 08 or 09. And I did the same thing, hit the face of a bunker. The problem is it came back and hit me in the chest and then plugged in the bunker. So now I got a stroke penalty for hitting me, and I've got a plug lie way worse than my original. And I went from like 4 under to even par as fast as you could blink. And when he did that, I was thinking to myself, like, how lucky is that dude, that guy ain't getting that. He's not getting out of the way of that thing. It could plunk him as easy as anybody. And then it pins against the back lip. And I mean, he's making
I was going to say that so easily could have just been stuck on the back where like he's just trying to chip it forward in the bunker so that he can pitch out.
Yeah, he could have been hitting his 4th or 5th shot from that bunker with no problem.
Can you imagine if he got stuck in the bunker like leading by 1? That could have been an all-time screwed by an Open champion.
Vandervelde type deal.
Yeah, that could have been something. But great par save.
Hey, I was impressed. He played super aggressive early, like hit a lot of good shots. Like we haven't really talked about him much. Like he was impressive on Sunday, in my opinion. Like I didn't like he was never on my radar. I thought he would shoot a million. He didn't. He played well. He had good shots. Like what he did wasn't fluky.
He was so good off the tee. And the thing that I loved from him was that he stayed aggressive off the tee, would not take driver out of his hands unless he needed to. And I think part of that, like we talked a little bit about this leading into the week, that sometimes the conservative decision is to put driver in your hands. And I think for him, it was almost like, look, this is going to be a challenge no matter what I do. The best thing that I do is hit driver and hit it accurately. And if I can do that, then I make the approach shots all day long, the around the green shots all day long, that much easier on myself. So I thought it was a great game plan. It was really cool to see that confidence off the tee. But I also want to reinforce the idea that just because it was aggressive off the tee doesn't mean that it wasn't like this, almost nerve-driven decision. I think it was really calculated and just really smart, not just aggressive.
So I think that if his shot on, is it 3 with the berm across the middle, doesn't it cleared it by like a foot maybe, and then ends up in a walkway path, and I think he makes birdie from there. If that ball goes in the water, I think his whole round is completely different.
Very possible. It's very possible.
I mean, that's just where, like, I mean, that thing obviously was a touch toey. He hit all high cuts the whole week. That ball drew like 3 yards, so he had to hit it off the toe. So it tells me it's diving out of the air. I mean, and it literally flew by not far at all. I mean, I think after done rolling, it was like 8 feet over. So, yeah, I just think there's a lot of little things. I mean, we can say the same thing about Horschel. That bunker shot on 8 hit the lip and ended up going up there. I mean, he still missed that short putt, which another gritty bogey putt that he made coming back. It was longer than his par putt. But, dude, there was so many just little things watching from a golf background that I was just it was just intriguing, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was one of the best weeks of golf that I can remember. It was just spectacular. Saturday and Sunday in particular were unbelievable. Wish we could have that more often, but let's move on to the 3M Open finally. We'll start with some course fit discussion. It's a very strong course fit model. The 2 skill sets that really jump to the forefront that we should care the most about this week: driving accuracy, again, that's our strokes gained driving accuracy metric, and around the green play. We see just a little bit of a decline in predictive value for both driving distance and iron play, both still quite important this week. The biggest decline, though, is on putting. So we're going to see very similar golfers really pop in the projections this week. And when we turn our attention to the top of the board, we do, in fact, see guys like Keith Mitchell, Kurt Kitayama, Chen Kim, Johnny Vegas, Adam Svensson, ball strikers who can't putt. There are lots of them. Those are the guys who are really going to pop this week. So a lot of our favorites, honestly, in this field. We've got Thigala, we've got Sam Burns, Billy Horschel, Akshay Bhatia, Keith Mitchell, Keegan, Cam Davis, Van Rooyen, Dunlap, Knapp, Ben Griffin, Kitayama. Like, it's a very long list of guys that we have been
Austin Eckroat. How do you leave Austin Eckroat off that list? Like,
good point. Austin Eckroat. Honestly, I should probably include Johnny Vegas because I play him significantly more often than I should. Not somebody that I expect to talk about each week. And then there he is projecting well and in my lineups. Really good score. So at least I have that explanation for it. This is so random. My brother's favorite golfer has been Johnny Vegas for like 10 years. He doesn't even really watch golf. And yet on his like ESPN app, he's got Johnny Vegas favorited. So I'll be like, Andrew, guess where Vegas is? He's like, I already know. He's tied for 23rd. It's like, you don't play golf.
That's awesome.
One of the most random favorite athletes in the sport anyone has ever had.
Yeah, so it's funny. I think this thing should be called the Tony Finau Open because he deserves to be the favorite every week. Mm-hmm. And if he gets the right draw last week and finishes 25th, he's probably 7-1 instead of 12-1. This place is built for Tony Finau, in my opinion. Like, and he showed it. He won here. He's finished second here. Should have won here last year and hit it in the water. But I agree. It's kind of a version of Craig Ranch, in my opinion, a version of where they play the Byron Nelson, like very similar type of golf course. Probably, I've only played this place once, but playing this place, so the benefit of having Canadian Tour status was we could play all the TPC courses outside of a few. There are a few that are TPC that are owned by the tour, but this is one of the places I got to play, obviously being in the north. It is as close to Craig Ranch as I could imagine on the tour. Obviously, different grass type.
We see that in the course fit model, by the way, because I think the biggest similarity is that we get this big boom in around the green signal, which again, not that common on birdie courses. The only real difference is that there's a flop between the emphasis on driving distance at Craig Ranch versus here driving accuracy. And honestly, I think that makes sense too, because you have more hazards off the tee. There are bigger penalties off the tee. So it's not necessarily like the actual skill of driving accurately. It might just be more about the decision making off the tee, making sure that when there's water right and just harmless rough left, that if you miss, you should be missing left, and not everybody does.
And I also think that the fairways here are, yes, there's water, but it's wide to get to that water, right? So it's not like you're hitting it into a narrow fairway. Just don't hit it on the side of the water. And for like somebody that hits it as short as I do, I was never like, man, I had to hit a really bad shot to hit it in the water here, right? Like now the guys that hit it further, obviously it's a little bit different, but you know, you mentioned a ton of names that are 1,000,000% on my radar. Jake Knapp is one that I'm just I can't, I mean, 72-1 on Jake Knapp here is just an unbelievably large number. It just doesn't make sense for somebody like him. There was another one. Mitchell is too high. I know that I told you about pre-show that I knew you were playing him. It was just at what number you were playing him.
But before we went live, just so people know, I was getting my Mitchell bet in, and I said, how much am I placing on this? And Justin goes, I knew it. It was only a question of how much. So, look, the cat's out of the bag. That's my first outright. Keith Mitchell, 35-1 with an each way. We have him at 4.1% to win. Basically means that his odds should be 22, 23-1. So instead, we're getting 35. Great value there. And then just outstanding value in the top 5 aspect of the each way. So I'm all over this one. I'm actually putting a little bit more on this outright than I usually do, because it's a lower number than I usually attack, and because I only have one other bet this week. That is Chan Kim, 60-1, who we have at 2.6% to win. Did I think that Chan Kim was going to be my outright pick this week? No, I did not. But man, it's kind of undeniable in the projections. He's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's 7th in our expected strokes gained, because he's really accurate off the tee, gaining 0.36 per round. That's strokes gained driving accuracy. And he's good with his irons, and he's quite good around the green. I didn't even recognize how good his short game is. Obviously, not a very good putter, but man, talk about like a perfect fit for this course fit model. Accurate off the tee, solid short game, bad putter, which is diminished here at TPC Twin Cities. So checks every box, and I'm very much in on Chan Kim this week.
So I'll be honest, I know nothing about him. If you put him in a lineup of 10, I wouldn't have no idea who he was. If you put 10 swings beside each other, I'd have no idea. This is the difference between Alex and I, right? He's just going to look at the numbers, and that's probably why he wins a lot, is because he's just you're literally just going off the numbers of what you see in front of you and the way that he checks the boxes.
You know why else I know Chan Kim? From earlier this year. Remember when we had that huge week in the Mexico Open, big giant takedown? I needed McIntyre to outdo Chan Kim in the last like 3 holes. I needed Chan Kim to make a bogey. He made a bogey for me that I needed. McIntyre made the birdie, and all of a sudden it was like a $17,000 week instead of what would have been a $3,000 to $5,000 week. So thank you, Chan Kim, back in the Mexico Open. Now this time I want it to be him making that final birdie.
So I think most people, obviously, that watch this know that I tend to lean into guys that I think have the talent to win, that maybe haven't won, or that are overpriced. Thor Bjornsson's won at 78-1. Knapp's won at 72-1. Sam Stevens at 62-1. There's guys that Maverick McNeely 56-1 that I think at a place like this, that if their length adds up to them hitting it straight this week, are gonna win. I I think that a lot of people, I mean, Taylor Pendrith 40-1 with the comparisons to Craig Ranch, it is a crazy number. I mean, I don't know what you can get him at, but that's I want a guy that I know can win if they get under the gun, with Pendrith can. And with the similar course fit, he just makes a lot of sense to me. I way prefer a Pendrith over a Cam Davis, where everybody else is going to Cam Davis in that range. I just don't. And I understand that the course fit is going to lean a little bit more into distance or into accuracy than distance. I just know that if you hit it, one of these guys that hit it really far is going to win. They're just going to happen to hit it really straight that week.
Yeah, I also think there are enough guys in this field who hit it both long and straight. Keith Mitchell obviously being the primary guy there, but Sahith Theegala, Kurt Kitayama, Johnny Vegas, Rico Hoey. There are a lot of guys. Mav McNeely, even Eric Van Rooyen, Keegan Bradley. Like it's a pretty long list of guys who are gaining a lot both with their distance and accuracy off the tee. We've seen Pendrith have some really, really strong weeks with his accuracy off the tee as well. So I'm very much not opposed to that call at all. You mentioned Thorbjornsen's name. I think the thing that stands out to me the most in the odds this week, not even necessarily that like I want to do something about, just that surprises me and that I don't agree with. Luke Clanton, 28-1. Michael Thorbjornsen, 70-1. Why is Clanton viewed that much better than Thorbjornsen in the betting market?
I think it's attention, right? It's the amount of attention and I can get Thorbjornsen at 78-1. So like, I just like, I think it's an attention of how much time people talk about him on the broadcast and what the attention they draw. I don't see how it's I mean, you can tell me, is he projected that much better?
No, I mean for us, like they're fairly similar. 0.3 expected strokes gained for Clanton, 0.19 for Thorbjornsen. Both of those guys, I've said it before, like I find them very difficult to project. I think like the only skill set that we know in the sample size as small as what it is for both these guys, the only skill that we know will translate into the future is distance. And they're kind of similar in distance. Thorbjornsen's actually the longer of the two. I find it surprising. I don't really understand why he is that far behind Clanton.
Yeah, I got no idea. It doesn't make much sense to me. I mean, I actually think that I kind of touted Clanton at the John Deere, where you were kind of against it. And I think he finished second or third. Like he played really good.
They tied for second. They both tied for second.
Yeah, but I was in on Clanton that week, and he was pretty high on DraftKings, 86 or 700, and you made some good points against playing him. But to be 27 to 78 is a ridiculous difference. Like it doesn't, like there's no way that adds up to anybody that knows anything about golf. And we're going to sit here and talk about it, and Clanton's going to win 27-1, and everybody's going to be like, "Oh, I told you," blah blah blah. But yeah, I mean Shipley's 100-1. I mean, like there are three players that I view very similar, right? I think they're all kind of in the same category at this point. And I think you have 100-1, 78-1, and 27.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, the week after the Deere, Clanton finished like 40 something or 30 or 40 something, and Shipley finished in the top 10, like 6th or 7th. So they're all kind of the same. And the variables in golf, like give me the guys with the highest odds. I don't. It's pretty weird to me the way that they have all that figured out. And no thanks on 27-1 on Clanton. So to move in here, what's your take on guys that played last week that are now coming in and going to try to play here. Obviously, we know Finau's done it a lot. Does him missing the cut last week affect anything? Does a guy like Burns that we know that can win and playing bad on Sunday, being in one of the final groups? What's your view on just the golfer? Like, be a golfer, right? Do what you've done for a living. What's your view on the mentality of coming back over here? I don't want just to, to call it what it is, a lesser event, right? It's just not the same as the British Open. Do you have any view of when you set your card or your DFS lineup of comparing those two? Right.
Yeah. So the first thing I'll say is, like, I do think that travel, that time difference, everything is going to affect everyone differently. But I think in simply signing up for this event, these guys are kind of telling us that it's not something that they view as problematic, right? So if somebody really felt like, oh, I don't know if I want to travel all the way back just to play this event, then they wouldn't sign up for it. They don't have to. So I think that's a big part of why I'm not going to really incorporate that into my process much. But I will say, I do think that if you're looking at somebody who missed the cut, it can be a blessing in disguise, right? Like, if I remember last year when we were on the Keegan win at the Travelers, he had missed the cut the week prior. And because he had missed the cut, a lot of people were off of him. And he said, you know what? Missing the cut last week ended up being the absolute best thing for me. I got here nice and early. I was able to put in some extra time in the range, really figure out some things in my swing that I had been, wanting to work on for the last few weeks and just hadn't had time to do so. So getting that extra 2 days of travel and extra practice can be a good thing. And obviously we know so many people, the way that they kind of approach DFS and just golf betting in general is to say, I want guys who are in great form, which means they want guys who didn't just miss a cut. So I think not necessarily like something that I'm actively looking for, but it's definitely something that if I see, and I see that it's resulting in a lower ownership projection than that player would have had and than that player deserves, it's then even more something that I want to attack.
So let's just compare two guys at the top of the board that are easy to compare. Tony Finau and Sam Burns. So Sam Burns playing late. Obviously, I would say in better form. We know he can win. The problem is, like, is the industry, so to speak, the industry going to notice the bad draw for Finau coming to a course that fits him really well, or are they just going to say, hey, Burns played one bad round on Sunday after being in contention, he's going to come here and have a chance to win, which I wouldn't be surprised. Like, Burns is just, he has the ability to win anywhere. Do you have a thought on that or a take on any of that?
I wish I had a take in the sense that normally I have ownership done by now, at least the first run, kind of running behind here, coming off the Open Championship and with a lot of NFL stuff on the horizon. So I don't have ownership yet. I don't know what the field is going to do. One thing I will say about Burns, we had a lot of success using his over birdies, and that is always a skill that really comes to the forefront from him, is his ability to make birdies more so than his ability to avoid bogeys. And yet his around the green play has been spectacular lately. Going back, he gained 1.2 around the green per round at the Memorial, 0.6 at the U.S. Open, 0.75 at the Travelers, 0.55 per round at the Open Championship. It's been really, really strong. So might be a better fit for this golf course than we certainly would have expected earlier in the year.
Yeah. I hope that Finau's bad play drives his ownership down. Personally, like I
don't think it will, but I don't know.
I don't think it will either, but I just hope it does. I hope that I can have a little bit of leverage there, because I just think that. So I think that Finau's the type that's going to come out with something to prove. Hey, I got the bad wave. I wanted to compete. I'm here to win. And with that mentality, I could be wrong. That's just the way that I view him as a person and a golfer. I also don't mind going back to Sam Burns. So this is, I think Sam Burns made the cut, played fine. He benefited from the wave that he was in, but everybody's like, oh, well, he only played good because he played at the easiest time on Saturday. Well, sure, but you still have to play good and shoot a really low number to get yourself into contention. It's not like everybody did it, right? There were 3 or 4 that did it. So everybody's like, oh, he just got lucky on Saturday. That's why he did that. I was, as far as Burns goes, I was disappointed on that like 10, 11, 12 stretch where he just kind of seemed to throw in the towel. After he made birdie on 8, I thought he would make a little bit of run. He didn't. It's just my opinion. I was disappointed but that doesn't. He doesn't give a shit what I think and whether it's not gonna. He's not gonna be thinking about that when he tees it up Thursday morning in the Twin Cities. So.
I can definitely get behind the Burns play. From a DFS perspective, the thing that stands out to me about the top of this board, number one, there's not a ton of separation in the projections. The highest is Tony Finau at 1.39 expected strokes gained. The lowest is Horschel at 0.71 expected strokes gained. So again, it's fairly small separation compared to what we can often see, especially when like Scotty and Xander are in the field. But all of these guys, at least the top 5, Finau, Theegala, Burns, Akshay Bhatia, and Billy Horschel, all have really high event-to-event standard deviations, which means they're all better plays when contrarian than chalky. So I'll be very interested to see the ownership. The answer at the top of the board this week might be very simply play the guys who are really contrarian at the top. Lone exception being Keith Mitchell, actually has one of the smallest event-to-event standard deviations. He has the second highest expected strokes gained in this field. A very solid course fit. We obviously both think he's significantly more talented than his results of late have shown. Part of the reason why he projects so well is that this putter that has just been absolutely atrocious, we have him losing a quarter of a stroke per round with his putter. Lately, it's been even worse than that. It gets diminished in this course fit model. It's a little bit hard to say because I do think there's something kind of going on mentally that's making this struggle a little bit more pronounced and consistent than it should be, and then our model would ever think it's going to be. So as much as I love him as an outright bet, maybe I will go away from him in DFS if he's popular, but he does profile as good chalk in the sense that he's low volatility and projects really well.
Yeah, so I've built 3. I'm generally a small entry player, right? Single entry or 3 max player. I've found myself leaning towards a build of Finau, Mitchell, and Tom Whitney together. So Tom Whitney, I think maybe I have the benefit of knowing he's a local player. He literally takes lessons from a guy that's 3 miles from my house. I see him, enough. He missed the cut last week or the week before, even though he shot 7 under on Friday. He shot like even 7 under, missed the cut by 1. I just feel like he's way underpriced at 6,100. And so if I can get Finau and Mitchell together with him and still have a reasonable amount of money to build around for the last 3, that was enticing to me. That's kind of where I started this week. Obviously, if Whitney doesn't play well, then I'm going to look like an idiot and it's not going to be fine. But that's just kind of where I stand with DFS stuff. Is I feel like you get the 2 guys that maybe have the most upside in the field besides Theegala to build around.
So I'll say a few things here. Number one, if you're able to start Finau and Keith Mitchell, basically anyone that you go down to make that work is potentially worth the risk. That said, if you nail Tom Whitney, it immediately becomes your best call. Even better than the Eckroat call from last year, even better than the Minwoo Lee call from, was that 2 years ago now? At the Players. Maybe it was just last year, but Whitney has missed 7 straight cuts. He's gone 12 straight events without a top 60 finish. So if you nail this one, immediately just crown yourself. That would be unbelievable. So let's see what Whitney has has in store for him this week. I will say from a course fit perspective, though, his one very clear positive skill set is accuracy off the tee. So from that regard, does fit, and a little bit of local knowledge, maybe he will get there this week. Again, it'd be an unbelievable call, so let's hope it comes through. And like you said, it's not necessarily about playing Whitney. It's also what he allows you to fit in the rest of your lineup. I honestly don't want to spend too much time talking about the rest of the DFS board because obviously ownership is such a huge part of our process. So instead, let's go into one and done discussion. This is not a whole lot for us to discuss anymore. Bryson was not very good for us, so we are almost certainly sunk for the one and done season. Better luck next year, but there are certainly still people out there who still want our help. So what are you thinking for one and done this week? And then we will close, as always, with an underdog play.
I honestly think if you have Finau left, you play Finau. That's just the way that it has to happen, right? If you have Mitchell, play Mitchell. I would even say if you have Thigala or Burns, play them, right? If I had to lean maybe anywhere like off the board, somebody that we may not talk about often would be McNeely, because if he does pop this week and hit it really straight, this is a birdie fest that he can obviously make $1 million of.
Yep.
That's kind of my basic thoughts. I like you said, I think we're pretty much sunk, so I haven't thought a ton into it, but that's kind of where my head would be.
Yeah, I agree with all that. The only two names that I would bring up as well, Akshay Bhatia, second in our win odds. So if you still have him, I think that's a very viable option. And then if you feel like you're in a place where you need to get really contrarian, you need to hope for like a 1% win, guys further down the board who also have at least a 2% win probability in our models, we've got Keegan at 3%, Hoagie 2.5%, Van Rooyen 2.1%, Ben Griffin 2.2%, Adam Hadwin 2.5%, and Chan Kim 2.6%. So if you need to throw a Hail Mary, I think all of those guys are viable. And with that, let's jump over to Underdog. We had ourselves a hell of a weekend in the Underdog streets. We hit a 3-pick play. On Saturday, we hit 2 3-pick plays. So 3 for 3 on 3-pick plays on the weekend. Big giant chunk of change headed our way. Thank you to Underdog, by the way, and to Phil Mickelson. They post his bogeys every single day. We take his bogeys every single day, and he hits his bogeys every single day. So thank you for that, Phil. The other really cool thing about those 3 wins, every single one of them were over in a hurry. The birdie picks that we played were all done on the very front 9, both on Saturday and Sunday. The bogey picks were done for Daniel Brown on the front 9. Phil took to like the 12th hole. That was it. So that was really, really fun to see. Let's build a very quick 3-pick play and then get out of here. So Justin, let's jump. Let me present. I'll show the screen here on Underdog. So some quick stats. We've got, let me bring that up for a second. We have 3.98 birdies per round here at TPC Twin Cities, 3.98, and 2.75 bogeys per round. So as you see the top of this board, what is your first thought on how to attack the Underdog plays here on Thursday?
So the first thing that I saw was an upgraded pick. And I'm not sure that you're going to agree, which I'm okay with, is the under birdies or better Cam Davis at 4.5.
Interesting. So let me do this. Let me go to birdies here. I kind of like the idea of going to the under. Again, 3.98 birdies per round, but we don't just want to say, oh, it's 3.98, and so everybody should be under 4.5, because 3.98 is the average for the entire field. Underdog obviously mostly posts better players in the field, but I don't really have an issue going under. In fact, let's be
even like
let's
Ben Griffin under 4.5. Like, I like Ben Griffin, great player, but under 4.5 birdies that's boosted seems it seems to me that they have a bunch of these. So like that's all the unders are boosted to 1.1. I'm gonna stay away from the guys that I'm going to stay away from Keith Mitchell. I'm going to stay away from Maverick McNeely because they could shoot 3 under and make 5 or 6 birdies, no problem. I'm going to stay away from Taylor Pendrith. But you get to some of these other guys, even Van Rooyen, like under 4.5 birdies is boosted. Like there's a lot of these guys that are boosted that's just I don't understand. It just doesn't make much sense to me.
Yeah, it seems like I think the reason why they're boosted on the lower, I think it's mostly just a way to protect themselves because they know that most people want to come here and bet higher on the birdies. And so they're bringing the higher down to 0.9x, and they kind of have to put the lower at 1.1x as a result. So I think that's why. But I'm kind of with you that it makes me favor the lower on some of these guys. And part of that, too, is I go check the weather for Minnesota on Thursday. We do have winds gusting up to 17 miles per hour. It's also going to be pretty chilly in the morning starting. A lot of these guys are going to start their rounds kind of in the low 60s. Certainly not cold by any stretch. It's not like it was over at Royal Troon, but maybe scoring won't be quite as good as it usually is. And so if instead of 3.98 birdies, the field averages, 3.6 birdies, then all of a sudden, even though these are better players, the lowers at especially 5.0 would look really, really good. So I think the only place I disagree with you is I think that more often than not, we're going to find better options to go lower at 5.0 than 4.5, even with that 1.1x, just because remember, like to get to go over 5 birdies, you need to be birdieing a third of the holes. That's a big jump to get to from 5 to 6. So I think I'd rather find guys at 5.0 to go lower on if we want to go in the lower direction. Whereas I think there are some guys at 4.5 who don't have.
I'd love to know what Ben Griffin's birdie per rounds are this year. It just can't it just doesn't make much sense for some of these guys.
I do recall that Ben Griffin was better at avoiding bogeys than making birdies. 8th in bogey avoidance, 54th in birdie or better percentage at 22.9%. Let's do this. That is 22.9. So that's an average of 4.1 birdies per round.
Yeah. And so, like I said, if he's got an early tee time, like you were talking about, and you get a boosted number on it, I think if it was an even number, I wouldn't want any part of it. I just think that you add the boosted number and it just gives you a little bit more. All of your. The other one that stood out, and I know I'm going a different direction here, is over Grillo 2 bogeys. That piqued my interest as well. The only reason that he's even being offered is because of his course history. I don't think that we'd even be talking about him if he wasn't. I don't think they would be offering odds on him if his course history wasn't so good.
Yeah, so the only thing I'd say there is if we're going to go lower on birdies, then we want to go lower on bogeys as well, because otherwise, if I put in bogeys here and we go
it should be
it goes all the way from 3x to 2.58x. So that would just slash the odds too much. We've got to.
I don't understand that. If you're betting more birdies, more bogeys is less correlation, right? More birdies means the course is playing easier. So
no, but we were talking about lower birdies.
Oh, right? Yeah. Gotcha.
So yeah. So I think I think maybe the answer is we go to bogeys first to kind of figure out what we want to do on the bogey side and then use that to help make our birdie decision. I will say, though, the one that stood out the most to me was less than 5.0 birdies for JT Poston. Poston
Agreed.
really does not project that well for us. Only 0.57 expected strokes gained per round. Again, like let's compare that to the other guys who are at 5.0. So we've got Batia, we've got at the top we had Sam Burns, Tony Finau, and Sahith Theegala. Like one of those is not like the others, right? Finau's at 1.39, Theegala 1.15, Burns 0.87, but is one of the best birdie makers in the world. Batia 1.28. So Poston's like almost 3/4 of a stroke behind most of those guys. He shouldn't be at 5.0.
Yeah, I 1,000,000%. And it's just a common factor of just not as much birdie power, right? Like we've talked about this in the last few weeks since we started doing this is, can he make more birdies? Yes, his birdie power is just not the same. He doesn't have as many opportunities. So if you're going to put that with a bogey, an under bogey bet, I think the first one I would go to is to a guy that I feel like hits it really good and is liable to make 18 pars and 0 bogeys, and that would be Adam Hadwin. His over-under is 2.5. You can tell me how that projects, but I like that makes the most sense out of all the numbers to get that extra half and want to play the lower.
I think that this is probably a really good call. Let me double check his numbers, but in theory, this makes a lot of sense because number one, Hadwin doesn't really have any weaknesses in his game. His worst category is his distance, which doesn't matter as often as much as it usually does. And he still gains 0.02, and then 0.14 gained with his driving accuracy, 0.19 with his approach play. Very good on and around the greens, 0.14 in both. So in theory, this is a guy who profiles like somebody who should be quite good in his bogey avoidance. Let me double check just to make sure that's the case. But I like this call. Also, just from an expected strokes gain perspective, quite good as well. And the other thing is, like, if we're going less than on bogeys, I certainly think we want somebody at 2.5 instead of 1.5. That's obviously an enormous jump. His data actually doesn't back that up. 133rd in bogey avoidance, 59th in birdie or better percentage. I feel like of late, though, we've had more success when we think about the profile of a player and how they fit the golf course more than just this bogey and birdie data. So I think I'm on board. Lower 2.5 bogeys. Again, like, look at the quality of player around him. He's a better player than Patrick Rogers. I think he's as good, or if not a better player than Ben Griffin, than JT Poston, Cam Davis, a lot of these other guys at 2.5. So I like the call on Hadwin lower.
So in the I think he's less volatile than a guy like Pendrith, right? And to be honest, the reason we have these odds is because guys like Underdog, guys like Prize Picks, places like Las Vegas have access to the same numbers. You know, obviously at FTN, we try to be better or further ahead than them. But like you said, the last numbers you were talking about with the bogey avoidance of what you have, I think that's just an overall projection and not a sign of what we know that he is, right? It's just how it's been recently. So, you know, you try to be ahead of we talk about this all the time. Van Rooyen would be another one that we could, you know, kick around being under 2.5, in my opinion. But like outside of that, like that's the only two unders that really stood out to me.
Yeah, Van Rooyen's interesting. Ball striking is so good. The around the green being bad scares me with him very easily. Like he could play 15 great holes and just not get up and down on the 3 holes that he missed the green on. But he could also have a day where he hits 17 of the 18 greens and never sweats a bogey. So, and I'm not really sure what to do on this last one. Maybe let's go back to birdies for a second and see if we can find any other unders that we really like. Is anyone else at 5.0 that doesn't deserve to be? Oh, Justin's computer shut down. So we'll see if he can make his way back in. And if not, I'll just come up with the final play, and then we will call it. So let's see. I'll talk through. Honestly, we might just go to Justin's call earlier. Ben Griffin lower than 4.5 birdies. I want to also look at Patrick Rodgers, because Patrick Rodgers doesn't strike me as one of the better players in this field. Only 0.34 expected strokes gained for us. Iron play really kind of the only concern for him, but iron play is also one of the keys to making birdies. So even though the signal is slightly down in the course fit model this week, it still can be a really important factor when it comes to making birdies. So kind of the same way that Hadwin profiles as somebody who should be very good at bogey avoidance, Rodgers profiles as somebody who shouldn't be good at making birdies. And sure enough, 49th in bogey avoidance, 85th in birdie or better percentage. So at least this time the data does kind of fit with what we would expect given just the overall profile of Rodgers as a player. So I think right now the leading candidate is going to be Patrick Rodgers lower than 4.5 birdies. Let's see if we can find something else. That still, by the way, gets us a 6.13x on this three pick play. So we are still getting slightly boosted odds from this inverse correlation. Trying to figure out if Justin can get back in. I think let me text him real quick. Okay. With that, I remember Justin also pointed out Cam Davis. The only reason I don't like his lower is because Cam Davis is kind of like Cam Young as well, in the sense that he's far, far better at making birdies than avoiding bogeys. So I don't think I want to go there. Hoagie, Van Rooyen, Pendrith, all of these guys, very, very explosive scorers at times. Grillo is an interesting one because I really like the point that Justin made on Grillo in the sense that he's only at these numbers because of his course history. We don't really care about course history. He is a good scorer historically. So that is a bit of a concern. But, man, where is he in our projections? I don't even see him. Only 0.03 expected strokes gained for Grillo. Huge, huge issue for him is that his short game is amongst the absolute worst in the field. We have him losing 0.27 strokes per round with his short game. In fact, the only guy immediately worse is Cameron Champ at 0.28 per round lost, and Nick Hardy 0.31. So awful short game for Grillo. That would hurt him more in the bogey avoidance, sure, but it also will come into play on some, par fives where you're not hitting the green, some shorter par fours that are scoreable because you're going to be driving the ball around the green, quite literally. So the fact that Grillo's at 1.1x to go under does intrigue me. He has not been good of late. 43rd at the Open Championship, cut at the Scottish Open, 55th, 41st, 27th, 64th cut, 64th, 64th cut before. Like, he hasn't played well since the API all the way back in March when he finished tied for 8th. So I think that's going to be the third play here. We're going to go Emiliano Grillo lower 1.1x. Let me zoom out for a second here, and you can now see oh, wait a minute. We already had enough. Oh, wait, no, we didn't. I don't want Rodgers in there. So the play is going to be JT Poston, lower 5.0 birdies or better. Adam Hadwin, lower 2.5 bogeys or worse. Emiliano Grillo, lower 1.1x payout, 4.5 birdies or better. That leads to a 6.74x payout. That's going to be the official Pro V Pro 3-pick play of the week. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Catch you next time.